right, guys, the name of this sermon is going to be called Wanna Trade Spit? Yeah. Another one of those with a weird title. Wanna Trade Spit? So what is this message is about? You can probably tell by how I'm talking and how I'm looking. I'm pretty tired. It's been a long day today. I had a little adventure today, had a little road trip, and surprised I didn't catch any road rage. But it was pretty interesting, and I'm going to share some of that at the end of this sermon. But I'm going to try to keep it kind of quick. It's a pretty simple, straight to the point message. And what this message is about what we speak. And let me say this. There's that saying, it's easier said than done, which simply means, okay, you can say I need to be doing this and doing that. It's easy to say, but it's a lot harder to do it. It's always easier when you're on the outside looking in or the inside looking out. It just depends on your perspective. But it's always easier, or it seems to be always easier to say something, to talk about something, than it is to actually do it. Right? Here's the thing about that. And in many cases that can be true. But sometimes in our Christian walk, there are some things or some instances where it's easy for us to do things, or over time it gets easier for us to do things once we finally step out of our comfort zone and we think, oh, this isn't so bad. But it seems almost like sometimes the more we get good at doing things, all of a sudden we have a hard time saying the things that we need to be saying. So at first it's easy for us to say stuff and not do it. But then when we kind of step outside of the box and get good at doing stuff, all of a sudden the thing that we used to be good at, which is saying some stuff, we have a hard time doing it now suddenly. In other words, it's almost like we struggle to keep that balance. And here's what I mean. Sometimes, you may have folks who it's easy for them to do things that others are afraid to do, but maybe little things that they may need to say is a challenge. For some people, it's hard to apologize, but on the other hand, there are some people where it's hard for them to say, I forgive you. All because we don't want to forgive, even though as Christians we're supposed to be forgiving. Also, we have a hard time saying what's wrong. Now, at first, we may be the type of folks where we're emotional. We may wear our heart on our sleeve, and we'll be quick to tell you how we feel, what we think about stuff. You make us mad, we'll be sure to give you your 2 cents on what we think about what you did or said. Oh, well, girl, honey child, you'll have people that are quick to snap on you and go off on you and just, they'll give you a piece of their mind in no time. But it seems like once we start to step outside of the box and do certain things more that we were uncomfortable doing, suddenly we don't go off. And suddenly we have a hard time expressing ourselves. And here's why. Sometimes when we're just kind of in the boat with folks, so to speak, and we're all just kind of looking at that water because we don't think we can walk on the water to get to Jesus or do anything that's going to draw attention to ourselves. It's easy, it's comfortable, but when we step out and we start walking around and we start doing all these things that take us out of our comfort zone and other people out of theirs, a lot of people might look and cheer and be like, ooh, wow, amazing, and give you the thumbs up. And the more you do things that other people are afraid to do or have struggles with doing, and it just seems like you're an overcomer and you do all these things and you do all these works and you're so good at this and good at that, and what happens is it's almost like we get this hero mentality. It's almost like we get used to the pats on the backs and the high fives. We get used to some compliments. And what happens is we get this superhero mentality to where we feel this need, this desire to always be good at stuff and always excel at stuff and always be one to step out of the box. And so what happens is it's almost like we feel this pressure. And what happens is all of a sudden when we used to be a person in the boat running off at the mouth saying whatever, now that we've stepped out and we got a little reputation about ourselves, we suddenly get to a point where we can't show any weakness. Even when it's a good thing, we struggle to say, I'm sad. We struggle to say I'm mad and I'm upset about something. We struggle to say, the truth is I struggle in this area of my life. We have problems with admitting our faults once we get that superhero build to us. You know what I mean? We struggle because we've gotten used to how people look at us, and we don't want to tarnish that, not because we're concerned about what the people think, but because we don't want to lose that confidence boost that we got from people cheering us on. So all of a sudden, we're not good at just saying whatever anymore. In fact, some of us, we get strong in some ways, but when it comes to our mouth, we get real timid, and we watch what we say in instances where we should be speaking up and speaking out. But it's so hard and it's so troublesome sometimes, because you have to wonder, how do I express myself anymore? I've expressed myself through actions, but now I fail at expressing myself through words, when used to it was the opposite. So we struggle with that balance. And I want to say, for us as Christians, we must understand that, yes, we must walk the walk and have action, but we also must be able to still talk the talk once we get good at walking the walk. Some people do things, they go to church and, they do stuff, but they can't say the right things. They got great actions, but they'll cuss you out in a heartbeat, when instead they should be saying good and pleasant things, and then it confuses people, because they think, well, wait a minute, I thought you were saved and I'm listening to you, and you got a potty mouth and you're saying all these terrible things. You're slandering people and gossiping and cussing folks out every 5 minutes. And then just a moment later, you're talking about how good God is and inviting people to church, and it just seems like a mixed message. I'm not sure how to take what you're saying. We have to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk. We've got to have that balance. So that's what I want to look at. What happens when you finally get good at walking the walk and having some action, but suddenly you struggle with the talk? Just starting in Mark chapter 7, verse 32, it says, "And they bring unto him one that was deaf, and had an impediment in his speech. And they beseech him to put his hand upon him. And he took him aside from the multitude, and put his fingers into his ears. And he spit and touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said unto him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And straightway his ears were open, and the string of his tongue was loosed, and he spake plain." So what happens here is this: we have Jesus, who is on the scene performing miracles, and you got some people who bring this guy to him who he's deaf, he can't hear, and he also has a speech issue. And they bring the guy to Jesus, and Jesus unstops his ears so that he can hear. And instead of just doing something simple like touching his mouth, he actually takes some spit and puts it on his tongue to be able to cause him to speak. He basically just spit on his tongue, almost like making out with somebody without actually touching lips. It's kind of weird, but that's what he did. And we also know there's another area in the Bible where he used spit and put it on somebody's eyes to make them be able to see again. but he spit on his tongue to help him speak, to help him be able to say what it is that he needs to say. And how many of you know that one of the things that God wants us to say for sure, especially when he's done something for us, he wants us to praise him. He wants us to have a spirit of praise about ourselves. He wants us to testify and share with others what he's done for us. We got to talk the talk. A lot of times we can walk and act these things out and mimic and mime things out, but sometimes we get scared to say things anymore because we're afraid that people are going to point and say, well, look at these holy rollers, look at these Jesus freaks, look at these folks that all they want to do is talk about God and going to church and getting saved, and ooh, so and so got baptized, and they just can't stand it. Some people can't stand it, but listen, it doesn't matter. You don't stop speaking about God. You don't stop testifying about the good things that God does in your life just because there may be some folks that don't get it or it rubs them the wrong way. You don't have to force them to listen, but to those who will listen, share it. If some folks don't like it, they don't have to hear it because you didn't make them hear it. It's not like you put a gun to them and told them you better listen to what I have to say. Go to church, like you're pointing a gun at somebody and telling them you better go to church. No, all you're doing is sharing the gospel. It offends people. It makes some folks mad. Let them be mad. Let them be butthurt. Let them be strained in the anus. Just let them be. Pray for them. And don't just say, I'll pray for you, and mean it all sarcastically and all passive aggressively. No, really mean it. Really, for real, take a moment to pray for them. They seriously may need it. They may not even know they need some prayer. They may think their life is all together and they don't need God. But a lot of times folks like that, they're the main ones that really do need them. Just because they don't see it doesn't mean that that's not the case. But you as a Christian should know. So that's what I wanted to bring to your attention with this. When was the last time you, quote unquote, let Jesus spit in your mouth, so to speak? When was the last time you let him use your lips, use your tongue to speak well to somebody or well about somebody, versus tearing people down with words, versus slandering people and throwing their name, slinging their name around in the mud? And listen, and versus false witnessing, saying things about them that you know isn't true, stuff you've made up, stuff that you and other folks came together to say about somebody just to cause them trouble, just to keep them from progressing in what God has for them, trying to cause a standstill in someone else's life because you're not satisfied with what's going on in your own life, which is your own business, something you need to be working out between the Lord instead of trying to stop someone else's advances. This is the type of stuff that causes Christians to enter into witchcraft in the first place. You must be focused on your own salvation instead of trying to tear down someone else's. That's not very Christ-like. When was the last time you let Jesus spit on your tongue? When was the last time you for real prayed for somebody and actually spoke good things and asked God to forgive them and speak well, and not go to God and be like, oh God, I'm so mad at them. I just want you to do this, and I just want you to show them, and I just want you to blah, 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 and totally forgetting the fact that vengeance is for the Lord. But you want to do this sneaky thing where you tell God what you want him to do to some folks, but you want to back up and call it him getting his revenge. But you want him to do it your way. But that's not him getting vengeance. It's just you trying to use him to see what I'm saying? You're just trying to manipulate God at this point. When was the last time You allowed Jesus to spit on your tongue. When was the last time y'all had a spit swap? When was the last time? Let's look. Where do I want to go now? I'm enjoying that circus music. I'm dragging this out just to sing this little circus music. But anyway, let me be serious now. This is what I want you to notice. In verse 33, it says, and he took him aside from the multitude. This is the extra bit I want to show you other than just spitting on the tongue. It says, first off, that he pulled him off from the multitude. Not he just went right up to him and unstopped his ears and caused him to be able to speak. He pulled him from the multitude. Couple of things you need to get out of that, and that's this. First off, it didn't say that he just went up to him while he was in the multitude and just healed him. He brought him from out from amongst the multitude. In other words, it was like some sanctification. In other words, listen, you have to not only be willing to walk the walk, but you've got to be set apart, which means sometimes in order for you to walk the walk, you have to be willing to not walk with the crowd you're used to, walk with new people that you may not have known all your life, or even in some instances walk alone, but knowing in your heart that Jesus is walking with you. Okay, it didn't say that he walked up to him and just did it right there while he was in that multitude. Sometimes you have to be separated, sanctified, consecrated for something better, something greater, a new life, a new beginning for you. In other words, Jesus will do things in your life, but there are some instances where in order for him to do things for you and improve you, he has to get you out of the mess that you're in. Sometimes that means detaching from some folks that are toxic. Sometimes we have friends that we know mean us no well, but somehow we find ourselves getting caught right back up in their nonsense. He's trying to get you out of the toxic. This ain't no Britney Spears toxic music video. You got to get out of the toxic, and you've got to let him give you new life, washed with the living waters, washed in the blood of Jesus. So sometimes you got to be pulled out in order for Jesus to do the things that you want him to do in your life. The other thing I wanted to point out was it didn't say that Jesus just went up to him while he was by himself and then did it. He went out of his way to pull him out from amongst people. And I say that to say this. A lot of times we have this mindset that we only want God to pursue us and listen and impart things to us and use us on our quote unquote good days, on the days that we're ready, on the days that we're comfortable, on the days that we've set aside. You have to be set aside by God. Okay, not do things on how you want to set it aside. It's by his rules. So it can't be, well, let me go out and do this and do that and do all these sins, and then I'm going to take this particular day off from doing the stuff I know I don't need to be doing, and then I'm going to be like, okay, God, come anoint me, come touch me, come use me. What do you want me to say? That's not how it works. We have to be willing to be pulled out at his will and his timing, pulled out from amongst some folks to be used. Not just when we're ready on particular days. It's not, well, I'm going to go and listen, get drunk and get high with these folks. And then whenever I sober up, whenever life seems tolerable, okay, then I'll go talk to Jesus and then I'll just float back on over here. Oh, no, 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 no. God likes to do this thing where he pulls you out from right amongst them people so that they can see it. They need to see the change. They need to see the transformation so that you can be used as a witness to them, as a vessel, so that they can say, okay, if God can make those changes in my friend's life, surely he can do something for me too. In other words, you're not supposed to try to hide and be ashamed of what God is doing for you in your life. You shouldn't have to hide it from your friends. You shouldn't have to be like, well, let me come over here and do stuff with them for a while, and then when Jesus does awesome stuff with me, I got to be over here where they can't see it. No, they need to see it. They need to see it. So he's going to pull you out while you're hanging out with your drinking buddies, and he's going to pull you out with these people over here shooting up, getting high. And he's going to pull you out with the great fornicators of the world that just want to whore around. He's going to pull you out. He's always going to pull you out from the midst of them and say, okay, I'm going to use you. And if you want to be used, you got to understand that there are going to be some folks that see how this thing play out, and it can't be hidden because you've got to be used as a witness, and those people will have a decision to make. Either they're going to respect you or they're going to not want to have nothing to do with you. But if they don't want to have nothing to do with you, you are not supposed to give up and give in and trade in my calling for you to go and be a part of their nonsense. That's not how it works. If they decide to be good Christian friends and stick around, awesome. If not, I can get you some new Christian friends. Don't go running back to them. Because you get back around them and you start acting ways you shouldn't, and then you start saying stuff you shouldn't. When was the last time you allowed Jesus to spit on your tongue and use you to say some things, to minister to folks, even friends that may possibly run off and not want to have nothing to do with you because you've become a Jesus freak? Let's look. We can move on now. Luke chapter 6, starting at 27. Jesus speaking, he says, "But I say unto you which hear, love your enemies, do good to them which hate you." Already we see some action. Because really love is an action. It's not just a word. It's not just a thing and just a feeling. It's an action. You got to put action behind love. And sometimes it's hard to love enemies. But Jesus says, love your enemies and do good to them that hate you. So there's your actions. But look at verse 28. Bless them that curse you and pray for them which despitefully use you. Something I just talked about, praying for somebody. We can walk the walk, which was in verse 27, but in verse 28, we've got to talk the talk as well. You may love them, you may do nice things for them, but in private, so you'll do all that in public, but in private, when no one else is around, sometimes you come undone. Because you're not around folks and you look at it like, well, I don't have to put on this Christian show. I don't have to act nice here in private the way I do in public because no one's watching. So sometimes you get alone and you come undone and you start saying what you really think and what you really feel. And you talk about how you hate folks and how you can't stand folks and blah, blah, blah. And you just wish certain folks would die. You wish certain folks would go to hell instead of praying for them. You may have said in public that you were going to pray for them, but behind closed doors, sometimes folks get to a point where they do the exact opposite. They would rather curse rather than bless. You got to talk the talk just as much as you walk the walk. They go hand in hand. It's important. Going to chapter 23, still in Luke, but going to chapter 23, starting at verse 33, it says, "And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him and the malefactors, one on the right hand and the other on the left. Then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiment and cast lots." Jesus is saying, forgive them, they know not what they do. 35, "And the people stood beholding, and the rulers also with them derided him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he be Christ, the chosen of God. And the soldiers also mocked him, coming to him and offering him vinegar, and saying, If thou be the King of the Jews, save thyself. And a superscription also was written over him in letters of Greek and Latin and Hebrew, This is the King of the Jews." Let me pause and say this. What's happening here is this. We know this moment when Jesus is on the cross. Now, prior to this, he had already said that he knew Judas was going to betray him, and he did. He knew Peter was going to deny him 3 times. He said it. That Peter was going to do it, and sure enough, he did. He knew that later Thomas would doubt him rising up from the tomb, but he still loved his disciples. And even though he knew some disciples would turn their backs on him and run at the time he needed them the most, he still came back to visit them after he rose from the grave. Now, a lot of people would not want to do that. Some folks, when they're down and out, after people have betrayed them, walked away, they would not accept any apologies. They wouldn't forgive, and they would just walk off. They wouldn't come back and make some special appearance. They would just go to the ones like the Mary Magdalenes and the Mother Marys and anybody else who stuck with them through the rough times, the ups and the downs, but they wouldn't dare go back and make a second special appearance to anybody that did them wrong, even just once, even if they did apologize. But he went through all that. He was put on the cross. And he was out there being mocked, ridiculed. People are saying, well, if you really are the Son of God, save yourself. Save us. And they were mocking him when they were putting up this superscription that said King of the Jews. They did it mockingly, making fun, putting things up there in disbelief, but just to toy with him. All these people that he had came to save from their sins, and it was just going right over their heads. You could only imagine how he must have felt. But even though all that was going on, and even though people are tearing off his garments and folks casting lots, gambling for his stuff, he still finds it in him to say, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. When was the last time you were able to go through some rough stuff like that? People making fun of you, mocking you, downplaying your ministry, downplaying your Christianity, downplaying your salvation, downplaying your testimony. Oh, they didn't really go through that. Oh, God really didn't do that for them. They did it for themselves, or somebody else that they knew did it for them. They're just making up stuff. They're just full of crap, blah, blah, blah. But when was the last time you had all these naysayers and people ready to kill you that you decided to let Jesus spit on your tongue and have nice things to say like, Father, forgive them. I forgive them. Lord, forgive them. They just don't get it. They don't see the big picture. They don't fully understand what they're doing. So we read a moment ago that it's important to pray for people that do you wrong. So you can pray for folks behind closed doors, but we also see Jesus forgiving them right out in the open. A couple of things you can do to let Jesus spit on your tongue, so to speak, would be to pray for folks behind closed doors. In other words, simply meaning you don't pray for somebody for show, for people to say, oh, wow, you really are such a wonderful Christian. No, behind closed doors, even when no one can see you, no one can clap for you, no one can give you a Facebook thumbs up, those that you find yourself not being able to stand, why don't you pray for those people the way you would pray for someone that you loved? Do that behind closed doors, and then out in the open, say, I forgive you. Why? Sometimes we might say that we forgive somebody behind closed doors where very little can hear it, but out in the open, I ain't gonna forgive them. I ain't gonna let it go, because we have to put on this front and act like a tough guy or a tough person, and we don't want to show any sympathy. We don't want to show forgiveness. We don't want to show affection. We just want people to view us as somebody that's not going to be stepped over, even to the point where we ourselves become bullies and we become very unforgiving and very unchristlike. Pray behind the scenes for folks, but also forgive openly. Let's keep looking. Verse 39, it says, and one of the malefactors which were hanged railed on him, saying, if thou be Christ, save thyself and us. But the other answering rebuked him, saying, dost thou not fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man hath done nothing amiss. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. What's going on here is this. You got Jesus on the cross, but then there's two other folks being hung on the cross, on their own crosses, beside them. And these two guys, they actually have committed crimes. They're actually guilty of sin, unlike Jesus. And they both have two different attitudes. They both say two different things. One of the criminals says to Jesus, if you really are who you say you are, why won't you save yourself? And why won't you save us? Get us out of here. Da 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 da. He's coming at Jesus with this attitude, but the other one says, no, don't talk to him like that. Do you not fear God? Besides, he's done nothing wrong. We, the two of us, we're just paying the price for what we've done. Really, we deserve this. And then he looks at Jesus and says, remember me. See, that's kind of how we are. We're kind of like the first ones sometimes. We get into a little bit of trouble. We do stuff we know we shouldn't do. We know we're guilty. And yeah, it's understandable to want to go to God to get help. Go to your dad to get you help out of trouble. It makes sense. But sometimes we have the nerve to get mad at God when it seems like we're not always getting out of the trouble that we get ourselves into. So we go off on him like it's his fault. Right, come on. You know how it is. We do some stuff, we get into some trouble, some time goes by, we don't know how to get out of the mess that we're in, and we pitch a fit and stump our feet and yell at God and be like, God, why are you allowing this to happen? Why are you not doing something? And we have a few choice words with God sometimes and say things we really shouldn't. We take it out on him. We try to use him as a punching bag, all because we view him as the one to go to when we need help to get out of our mess. But when things are going good, we just don't want to seek him. We just want to go and do our own thing. We only want him around when we want something from him, when we got to get out of our own mess. That's it. We use our mouth for that. We use our speech to basically cuss God out sometimes. Say whatever we want to him, like he's just any person from the streets. But then you have this other guy who says, do you not fear God? Why would you talk to him like that? It's not his fault that we're in this situation. And then he goes and speaks to Jesus in such a nice way. That's how we should be with God. Even when coming to him about situations where we're mad, we're angry, we got to calm down and not go off on God and not take our frustration off on him, but go to him and say, God, help me. I need you, God. Not treating him like our own personal punching bag. Two different mindsets. One of them, you would have thought Jesus had spat on his tongue because of how he was speaking. The other one, you would think that Jesus would want to slap the spit out of his mouth from how he was talking to him. But we have to understand, we can either go about this one way or the other. Either we're going to use or allow Jesus to use our speech to say what needs to be said, or we can use our speech as a weapon, not only against other people, but even against God himself, and we see that here. Let not your speech be a weapon and cause offense, not to people or to God. Finally, the last place I want to take you is Proverbs Chapter 18. Looking at verse 21. It says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. Pretty popular scripture right there. We know that there's power in the tongue. There's power in our words, power in what we say. There's life and death in the tongue. People have a hard time understanding that, but it's the truth. A lot of times bad happens because we keep speaking bad over people and to people. We bring negativity to people, but also we bring it to ourselves. And this is the last little area I want to get into. I talked about how we deal with others, with our speech, talking the talk, and how we deal with God. But this last part is how we deal with ourselves. See, a lot of times we tear our own selves down. A lot of times we look in the mirror and all we want to do is talk about how ugly we think we are. All we want to do is talk about how we're nothing, how we're worthless. All because of what someone from our past did or said to us. So because people of our past were not satisfied, and even people of our present, all of a sudden we're not satisfied with our own selves. We have to look at ourselves the way other folks do, instead of looking at ourselves the way God looks at us. We're not concerned about what God thinks or what God has to say. It's all about what everyone else has to say. And we get so caught up in what naysayers or haters, so to speak, have to say. We care more about them than the one who loves us, who's God. Why do we care more about the people that can't stand us and what they have to say, but not care about God, the one who loves us? We get it so backwards. We get it all mixed up. It makes no sense. But oftentimes, that's how we are. We have to be careful how we speak, not just to each other and to God, but to ourselves. That's the reason why. A lot of times, some of us have a hard time getting progress, getting breakthroughs in our lives. A lot of times, we don't understand that we have to speak well over our own selves and over our lives and over our situations. We only speak negative, evil things. And so we get into these situations where we wonder why things in life are not getting better. And it's not so much that God needs to do something. Sometimes it's about what you're doing or about what you're speaking. If you would say, I am blessed. If you would say, I have good health. If you would say, I am a child of the Most High King. If you would say, I am beautiful in His eyes. I'm the apple of God's eye. I'm the head and not the tail. I'm the lender and not the borrower. Satan is under my feet. If you would say things like this more often, instead of just having your head down low, saying all the worst things you could possibly say about yourself, you would change things, because there has to be a change in the atmosphere. Your words charge this atmosphere. You must speak good over yourself. Otherwise, you just curse your own self. But backing up to the verse before it, it says, a man's belly shall be satisfied with the fruit of his mouth, and with the increase of his lips shall he be filled. It's all about the words coming. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Right? That's what it's about. It's about what's coming out of your mouth. What are you saying? That's what you benefit from sometimes. Sometimes it's not just about somebody else saying a good thing to you. We all love being prophesied to and having good things being said to us, and it's great. But sometimes we've got to say good things to and over our own selves. Sometimes we got to anoint our own selves with oil. Sometimes you just have to love yourself and have self-respect when people don't have respect for you. You got to respect and love yourself. I've said this on Facebook once before, but I'll share this. I was sharing that one time I had a girlfriend and she had freckles, and she didn't like the fact that she had freckles. She hated freckles. She thought they made her look ugly. So one day I was looking at her, and I was looking at her skin, and I was looking at her freckles, and I thought, these freckles kind of look like bacon bits. And I like bacon bits because they're good on salad. So I told her that. I was like, they kind of look like bacon bits. That's actually really cool because I like bacon. That's cool. And she thought it was the funniest thing. I mean, she just laughed so hard. And anytime we would be hanging out, and she got into one of her little pity parties about how she looked, I called her Bacon Bits. You know how people have a pet name for the person that they're in a relationship with, like Pookie and, Baby and Honey and, Snuggle Puff or whatever. My name for her was Bacon Bits, and it just tickled her, but it brought a smile to her face, and that's what mattered. Sometimes we have to be that way with ourselves and with each other. Sometimes we need to take the things that make us stand out and make us different, and sometimes we need to embrace those things versus tearing each other and our own selves down. Something to consider, but let me share this and I'll wrap this up. Today I took a little road trip, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but I was actually trying to get to Texas. I was invited to this event. There was a man of God that was going to be speaking. It was going to be this special event, and I had been invited to have this free pass to come and hear this man speak and speak over people and prophesy over people and things like that. And at first, I didn't think I was going to be able to make it simply because I didn't know if I was going to have, all the gas money to be able to drive all the way to Texas and all the way back here to Arkansas. And so that was the big thing for me. And also, I was thinking, I I'm new at driving, period. So I don't know yet about trying to drive all the way out of state. That's kind of a big step, kind of fast to try to take. And as you all know, of course, I play Pokemon Go, and um, of course, you're basically when you play this game, you're basically looking at a map, almost like when you're looking at GPS, or a Google map. It's the same layout, just a more colorful, animated layout, but it's still similar. And I've been driving around town, and this game has actually helped me understand the roads, some of the roads and streets better in this town. I've spent most of my life here in my hometown, and I'm just now, after so many years, learning about where certain streets lead to. I'm just like, what? This street connects to this road over here? I didn't know that. I've been taking the long way around, and I could have been taking the shortcut, and now I know it thanks to this game, running around looking for Pokemon or gyms or Pokestops or whatever. And I got to thinking, let me try this GPS thing out, and I actually went to a different town one day earlier this week to meet up with this woman because I had something to pick up from her. And so I used the GPS to get there, and I'm like, okay, I can understand this. So maybe I can make this trip to Texas. But then today came, and I was just like, I don't have the money for it. And I had some money to pay for car insurance because I was thinking, obviously, if I'm going to be driving, I've got to keep this up to date, or else I won't be going anywhere, not even in town. And so I had went online to investigate, to see what I was going to have to owe, because I'm wondering if I'm going to be charged a late fee because I had not paid it the day that it was due. I was paying it the day after because I didn't have it at the time. And I get on there and I see that it's been paid for the month, but I'm not the one that paid it. And so that just totally blew my mind right there, because I had already been told the night before by a prophet slash minister that I was talking with on the phone that God was going to cause people to give unto me, and for me to not look at it as like me having to owe someone or pay him back. It's just because of how I've given to people over the years. God's causing people to give unto my bosom, and I'm like, okay. And so to get online and see that had been paid for, that was a blessing. I totally didn't see that coming. So I was like, well, maybe let me use some of this money that I was gonna use to pay this. Let me use it for some gas. Let me try to get up here. And this was like way later on in the day, because previously I had it in my mind that if I did go, I would need to go to bed early the night before, get up early, and drive, and ever so often stop somewhere to give my car a little bit of time to rest, because it's a used car. And when you drive it for so many hours, it has this issue where you got to let it rest so that the engine doesn't overheat. And so I'm thinking, I can just take my time throughout the day, not try to rush, be comfortable, drive for a bit, go somewhere and let the car rest, whatever, here and there until I get there. And then I can come back the next day, whatever. Well, it was much later in the day when I realized, hey, I do have money to go. And so what ends up happening is I realize I count the hours that the GPS is saying it's going to take to get there, and I'm thinking I can get there. I might be a little late, but not anything major. You know what I mean? I might just get in there while they're giving announcements or singing a song or something. But I'm like, I can make this work. And I'm thinking, since I'm crunched on time, I'm gonna try to not give the car as much rest as I had originally planned because I'm pressed for time to get there. So I'm using my GPS, and I get almost halfway there, and then that little meter, I see it starts to go up because it's starting to get a little hot. So I pull over, and I'm there for about 30 minutes or so, and I take off driving again. And not just minutes after me driving, it starts to go up some. So I'm thinking, well, let me stop at a gas station and put some gas in and let me chill for a while. Well, after all the time that it went by, it had been probably an hour and a half altogether of time of me just trying to get the car to cool down enough to where the meter wasn't going to go back up. So what ended up happening was, after adding all this time up, figuring everything up, I was basically gonna be like 2 hours late. You know what I mean? And there's the fact that I still have a few hours of driving left to go, which meant there was probably gonna be at least one, maybe two more times I was gonna have to stop for, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour or whatever. I was like, by the time I get there, it's gonna be over. Folks gonna be leaving. You know what I mean? Whatever time it ends, I'm surely by the time I get there, it's pretty much gonna be over. So I'm thinking, well, let me just enjoy what I'm doing while I'm here. I mean, I was bummed out, but it didn't surprise me at the same time. I knew there was a chance that I may not make it, but I thought I'd step out on faith and try to go anyway. But like I said, I decided to just kind of chill for a moment and just kind of browse and see what restaurants they had to eat at. And I chose a restaurant that we don't have here in my town, because you know how it is. If you're here from Newport and you go out of town, you're gonna eat somewhere other than, a restaurant other than something we already have here, because our choices are kind of limited compared to some of these other bigger towns around us. And so I went and ate somewhere and enjoyed that little meal, and went and looked around and tried to see who, if there were any Pokemon gyms in that particular town that I had made it to. And I was like, I don't want to fight any of these gyms. I'm just gonna go back home. And so I came back, started making my way back, and had to rest the car a couple of times, which was fine. One of those moments, I actually just parked at a Walmart somewhere and went and shopped and just grabbed a few personal items and hopped back in the car and came back. And on my way back, like I said, I had mixed feelings. I knew there was a chance that I wasn't going to make it there, but I was just bummed out. But I got to thinking, if I really wanted to continue to dwell on that, I would continue to get more angry and more angry and more angry. And if I continue to let anger build up, I could just go off on my car. And some of you know what I'm talking about. You get mad at something. It can be somebody, but sometimes something. Because, see, I've talked about how we speak to others and how we speak to God and how we speak to ourselves. But sometimes some things, objects as well, we should be careful how we talk to it. I know it sounds crazy, but seriously, listen. Sometimes we get mad at stuff. You know how when we have something and we know how to operate it, but sometimes it doesn't work the way we want it to, so we get mad at it. You might get mad at your microwave because, it's starting to go out. Or you get mad at your TV because, the remote's not connecting to it. Or you get mad at, this or that. People will get mad at their car because, it got a flat tire as if it could help it. You know what I mean? We get mad at objects, and especially pricey objects, and we go off on it. We punch it and kick it and pick it up and throw it. Get mad at somebody doing something. We'll pick up a chair and throw it and break the chair because of something that somebody did or said that had nothing to do with the poor chair. And then later we look and regret it because we did some damage to something that was useful to us, or something that could have been fixed if we hadn't went off on it. But not just our aggression in the physical things, but even our words. Speaking negatively over things. People get mad at their vehicle about something and say, oh, you piece of crap. Oh, you're just some hoopty. You're a piece of shit. You know what I mean? They'll just go off on it and say all kinds of negative things over that object, something that they rely on so much to get to and from. And I was sitting in my car, I was thinking, I could say a lot of bad things, but I was thinking, Matthias, which is what I named my car, said, Matthias, I paid only $500 for her. And up until this point, man, she's got me to and from where I've been going. Couldn't quite get to where I was going, but it wasn't her fault. I just realized later that I could have the chance to go, and I just didn't have the time to be able to let her have her rest when she needed it, to be able to get there on time. But considering the issues that she has, and being this old car, from the 90s, I'm thinking, she's done a really good job. And so instead, because like I said, I was getting a little frustrated for a moment, but I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I'm going to speak some stuff, but I'm going to speak some good things to and about this car while I'm driving. I'm just going to say some good stuff. And I was just saying stuff like, you're doing such a good job. I'm driving, you're doing such a good job. And I'm petting the dashboard of the car like when you pet your pet. When you pet your pet, your animal, your dog or cat, you pet and you go, good boy or good girl. I'm like petting the dashboard of the car. Good girl, you're doing such a good job. I'm saying all this stuff and talking to it like it's a person. I'm like, no, we're almost home. Just hang in there about a good 10 more minutes and we'll be there. We're almost home, girl. We're almost there, baby girl. You're doing such a good job. I'm just so proud of you. You've done such a good job. The same way I talk to my dog, just good job. And, but I got out the car and I was feeling tired, of course, from the hours of driving and being out in the heat. But I was so proud of my car. I got out feeling tired, but feeling good, feeling thankful and feeling blessed. And, it was like bonding time with the car and getting a little traveling experience under my belt because I hadn't really done any type of traveling like that. Nothing really much outside of my town other than going out of town to go to church, But other than that, that's it. And so that was a blessing in itself. For me, and I'm pretty sure for the car as well. I think that was good to speak well of the car like that to the car, as crazy as it sounds. So let Jesus spit on your tongue, so to speak, and watch what you say. Speak up and speak out, but have good, kind words of encouragement, not words to tear people down. Watch what you say to folks. Watch what you say to God. Watch what you say to yourself. But even watch what you say to things, especially the things that you rely on the most. Think about that for a moment. Don't curse things that you rely on. Don't speak bad over it. Bless it in the name of Jesus. I'm going to go ahead and pray us out here. Heavenly Father, I thank you for another time of ministering another word. Lord, I pray that people would get what they need out of this word. that we need to watch what we say, not let our tongues be like daggers and stab people in the heart with our words. It's important for us to watch our words and use good, kind words, words of encouragement, words that would cause people to want to be overcomers, not words that would cause people to feel like they're nothing and worthless and that they can't overcome any obstacle in life. And we must understand that when we use words as daggers, as ways to cut and tear people down, we become the biggest stumbling blocks and obstacles and mountains in people's lives. While we turn around and go to church and sing songs about God moving mountains for us, we must understand that we become mountains to other people, obstacles, stumbling blocks to other people, with not only our actions but even our words. And so let us not do that, Lord. Let us do better. And let us remember that this is something that as Christians, people are going to look at, and people need to be able to look at us and say, okay, I can tell not only by their actions, but by their words, by what they say, that they are Christians. Because our words sometimes actually speak louder than actions. There's that saying, actions speak louder than words, but sometimes our words alone can do so much. I give you the praise, glory, and honor, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.